Hi everybody, my name is Daniel. Thank you for clicking on this YouTube clip. It was a very clickbaitable title, I appreciate that. But we are actually going to go through the fact that the A-League does have the greatest fans when compared to the NRL and AFL here in Australia. Now, the first question we really need to ask ourselves is there a crowd problem in the A-League? Yes, in Australia, you're going to say yes, the media says yes, we're going to get to all that. But surprisingly, there was an article done by Chris Lewis of The Raw, an online publication, who didn't just shite all over the A-League and actually came up with arguments based on numbers and facts why the A-League crowds aren't doing so bad on the world scale. So the article pretty much says there's 14 leagues around the world that average over 15,000 people per game. The A-League pre-COVID, was 10,000 per game. Then when you consider the fact that we have a smaller population, the NRL and AFL is currently the biggest football codes in Australia, then a media, let's say it, have as much interest in the A-League's future as your 5th grade math teacher did when you asked the teacher, what's the difference between a left-angled triangle and a right-angled triangle? So when you put all those factors into this, the A-League crowds aren't doing so bad. So why are we here? Well, that's it? Do I stop? Do I go? Do I press stop? No, not so fast. So the another article came out from the ABC, I know straight away, ABC, Daniel, ABC? You mean the government-run news program? They must love the A-League. I mean, the A-League was the first football code to have a professional women's division, top flight women's division, the first football code in Australia to have a pride game, and the first football code that there was a kind of an atmosphere, a trust enough in the community that had the first openly gay player to come out in the modern era in Australia, a professional football athlete, professional athlete in general, from the men's side. So you must think that the A-League is like the ABC's, the ABC poster. Excuse me, 1 second. Excuse me. What are we talking about again? A-League, crowds, ABC hypocrisy. Yes, that's it. All right. Sorry about that. Anyway, ABC. So they did an article. No one knows, the A-League's in trouble. Like a plethora of articles about the A-League's in trouble. The crowds aren't going so well. It's just like it gets redundant. Even though this Chris gentleman just proved with facts and numbers that is actually not that bad. No, the ABC, with all their might, all their power, decides that, no, it's negative. Pre-World Cup's not as good as post-World Cup, right? And then, it's funny, tucked away in that article, just like that time you went to the store to buy yourself a new pair of shoes, and the clerk went to you, good day, and you replied with, I'm doing well, thank you, thanks for asking. Like you tucked that memory away. Inside this article is tucked away, I think a pretty important fact of why the A-League's not doing so well with spectators, and it's, apparently not doing so well with spectators, is they've struggled to break the mainstream media. The A-League has struggled to break the mainstream media. And I can be like, wait, mainstream media? You mean like the free sports section of newspaper, the free sports section of radio, and the free sports section in TV, like in the news? How do you break into a free market? I mean, is this a Confucius thing, like tree falling down in the wood? How do you break into a free market? How do you do this? I know you're going to come back and say there's no such thing as free, and there's commercial interest. I don't like a T-Rex that doesn't hold water. Not because the T-Rex has short arms, that's rude to a T-Rex. Not because they're dead, they're extinct. They don't hold water. But the fact that the commercial argument doesn't hold water is, let's just look at the facts. Again, facts. Channel 7, 9, 10, ABC, Age, all the newspapers, they all cover sports not affiliated with them. Well, it just happens. AFL, NRL on each channel, cricket, blah, blah. So that's already not really a good truth. And the second part is imagine if Channel 7, okay, maybe not Channel 7, because we remember what happened with the NSL days, right? Yeah. Just look into it. You understand what I'm getting at. But let's say Channel 9, for example. Let's say Channel 9 have the NRL, winter, doing fantastically well. Then they buy summer, the A-League during summer, doing fantastically well. That is a year long of content. They don't have to create it. It's self-creating content. Why wouldn't a commercial body want that? Anyway, I'll let you think about that. Comment below. Pretty sure you will. So now let's go to another interview. I know so many interviews. I had to research this. It's not based on just emotions. What? Anyway. So let's go to Simon Hill interview. Now, Simon Hill was interviewed recently by Zen Radio. Again, why are the A-League crowds so bad during COVID? I mean, like, it's like, and come on, during COVID, are you serious now? Anyway. So Simon Hill, smart, sexy, handsome man. If you don't know who Simon Hill is, he's actually a English-born journalist who loves Australian football. And even though he's born in Manchester and he loves Manchester City, so he has no right to like Australian football, he likes both Manchester City and the A-League. What? I know you Euro snobs out there are freaking out trying to come up with defense as to justify why, but he's actually born in Man City. Manchester. He's got a reason to follow the Premier League, right? So, now don't let that conflate your emotions here. We're going back to facts. Go back to facts. So he pretty much said, Daddy's doing right. The commentator said, oh, yeah, the A-League crowd's doing so bad. And he turned it. Sexy man. Make sure your safe search is off when you... Anyway, Simon Hill said, look, the amount of coverage the NRL gets and how little the A-League gets, it's surprised anybody rocks up to the A-League. And shouldn't the NRL be like selling out all their games, the amount of media coverage they get? And then I was thinking about it, looking at all those articles, interviews, there should be a metric for this. There must be a metric which, looks at crowd numbers and media coverage, or free media coverage. So I did that. I created that metric, unless someone else in the world has. There's 8 billion people. There's probably someone who's done it. But from my understanding, I created this metric. And it's called free advertisement nurtured spectators, or fans. Oh, you see where I'm going here? Fans. Now, we're going to get through some formulas and some math and some graphs. I know you've turned off, but don't turn off. Math is your friend. Every time you watch a sport, the scoreline is your friend. That is math. So anyway, we're going to go through what the formula is, and then this is going to be very dry. I apologize, but I have to go through all the rules about how I came up with the formula and what dictated the formula. All right, so prepare for boringness. If you're not already bored, well, then you're used to it, so get over it. All right, here we go. Here is the formula. So here it comes. So the formula is pretty much a very simple formula. It's called season average game attendance, which is fair because every league, AFL, NRL, and A-League, have different amount of games, different amount of teams. So you have to do the per game average, divided by what I call the media units. So it's average newspaper word count. So I've looked at so many different newspapers. I'll tell you which ones in a second. Looked at all the word count over a certain period and divided by how many papers are there to get the average word count, and did the same with the TV. The sports section of the 6:30 news, 6 o'clock news, that. I times the news reports by 10, because if you actually look comparatively between the length of newspapers, articles, and the length of TV segments, times by 10 actually makes them quite comparable. Not to say you read 10 words per second. No, it's just like a comparable length. There's a graph going to come up. You'll see what I mean. Anyway, we'll also go through more of the rules behind the formula. So first thing, I only consider the A-League men's, NRL, and AFL. I could do the same for the women's leagues, but I have a feeling we're going to have similar results. No lower tiers or international games. Only articles found in the sports sections of the news reports and the newspapers. I didn't consider word counts what I consider to be public health articles. So, for example, a bunch of ex-NRL players and coaches, they've come up with a charity to make people aware about depression, like a depression awareness. And that's great. That's fantastic. Even though it was in the sports section, I didn't count that word count. It's public health, public service. Now, what I did, because I'm based in South Australia, I used ABC 7, 9, and 10's news reports to cover the AFL and the A-League coverage. Again, we have 2 AFL teams to 1 A-League team, so there's actually plenty of opportunity to talk about the A-League. In Sydney, though, because we don't get the NRL coverage in LA, to make it fair, I looked at the ABC 7, 9, and 10 in Sydney and looked at how much NRL is covered compared to the A-League. Again, there's 3 teams in greater Sydney area, so there's plenty of opportunity to cover Sydney. All right, so that's the TV. The newspaper, I covered the Advertiser, the West Australian, Courier Mail, the Age, Sydney Morning Herald, and the Herald Sun, so kind of the bigger papers that are around. The week I used was the 27th of Jan to 3rd of February, like the last week. Even though that's technically 8 days, if you look at the Friday media units, it's pretty much the weekly average, so it doesn't really affect the results. I also want to look at the week leading up to the A-League season, like the week before the A-League season kicked off. Unfortunately, I could only get the Sun, the Sydney Morning Herald and the Age newspaper articles. They only go back that far. And same as the NRL and AFL, I wanted to get like a midweek comparison. Again, same problem, only the Sydney Morning Herald and the Age of around 21, 22 is kind of the first back I could go. I still did over the 8-day period, but that's as far back as I could go. And for the season attendances, so for the crowd numbers, I used the average between around 21, 22 for AFL and NRL. If that average was less than the season average, I would use that because maybe the media wasn't that great that week. If the average was above the season average, I would use the season average because let's make it consistent. For the A-League, I actually used the attendance count prior to the Melbourne victory penalty. And that's fair because this is the whole point of seeing how well the media can influence crowd numbers. Having a cap on a crowd number is like an artificial cap, which shouldn't be considered. So we've actually considered that. Also, Perth are currently only playing in a 4,000-seat stadium, as well as Western United technically haven't really played a technical home game because their stadium's being built. So if you consider all of those factors, there is some sort of like conservative approach to the A-League numbers. Anyway, that is the metric. That has how I came with the metric. It's pretty much just that season average over season, season average over weekly media coverage. That's it. Again, I didn't consider the radio because it's too hard for the radio. I'm not sitting by a radio for 3 hours recording this. This can all be done after the fact. Through newspaper subscriptions that I had to take out, or the fact that the 7, 9, 10 ABC publish their news on the websites, and you can just stop, pause, count second. Very simple. All right, so there we go. Thank you for sticking around for the rules. Hopefully that didn't bore you too much because, yeah, I understand it's very dry. So again, now let's come back to our findings. All right, this is where the rubber hits the road. So what's our first finding? First thing we're going to do is look at the weekly coverage of the A-League, NRL, and AFL between the 27th of Jan, 3rd of February. So if you look at this graph here, you can see that everybody covered their own favourite sport more than the A-League. So the A-League AFL was covered 3 times as much as the A-League, and the NRL twice as much as the A-League. And this is the middle of the A-League season, people. We are, 4 or 5 weeks away from the NRL start and 5, 6 away from the AFL start. And this is how little coverage the A-League got. And look at ABC. Way to go, ABC. Way to cover the A-League. Thank you. Thank you, ABC. Thank you for that. A lot of this A-League coverage was about Juandé's broken leg, right? Now, the cynic in me is like, they're only covering the fact they broke his leg because it makes football look bad and a dangerous sport, right? Because hopefully that's not the case. Hopefully in 3 months, 6 months' time, all of these papers and all of these TV shows are going to interview one day to see how his recovery is going, because that is what decent people do. They don't use people suffering as a way to make things look worse, all right? So I'm pretty sure that's what they're going to do. Yes, I know it's cynical. That is the cynical side of me. Unfortunately, I've become a cynic, especially looking at these stats. So that's how bad the A-League gets. Not only that, you also got to look at how many back page coverage there are for like the newspaper. Most of the back page coverage, you might, if you're lucky, you might get like one of those little small photographs of like the A-League, like, look, turn to page 10 of the A-League, whatever. And most of the A-League articles are back on like a page 7 or page 10 of the sport. They're not even near the front. So there's no respect. No respect, I tell you. Anyway, so that's the weekly stats. You can see how bad it is. Yeah, terrible. So what we'll do now, and you look at that graph. You see how like the 7, 9, 10 and like the media units aren't really out there between the newspaper and the radio. So I think that was a fair assumption of the 10-second rule. So now we're actually going to go to the fan score. So we're putting all that information and the season attendance averages into the formula to find out what the fan score is. And as you can see, the A-League's done very well. The A-League has got better bang for your buck. So you get more bums on seats for the same media, for the amount of media coverage it gets. The one thing you need to also consider is that I used the AFL and NRL's round 21-22 data. As you can see, I can only use 2 papers, and they're very diametric when it comes to their stats. So one's very high, one's very low. So if you consider the other newspapers like we saw on the previous slide, the Courier Mail, West Australian, Advertiser, how pro NRL and AFL they are, they would bump up those average numbers. The average media units, they'll bump up. Even the TV. I use the TV data for now because that's what I've got. I know it's not correct, but that's what I've got. And again, that is 4 to 5 weeks before season starts. It should not be that high coverage. So you can combine lower than average TV numbers and a lower media unit average in general. Both the AFL and NRL, you could probably halve those numbers again. So the A-League is like pretty much doubling the effectiveness of media coverage into bums on seats. I know that sucks, you don't want to hear it, but these are just purely numbers, people, and these are purely numbers. That's how it is. Right? You happy with that? Good. Again, I'm not even talking about weighting back pages and all that stuff. This is just purely just numbers and word counts. So one thing I did want to just look at is also the week leading up to the A-League season. So I actually had, again, only the papers, only had newspapers I could use, and I used the TV now because again that's all I've got. Sorry everybody, that's all I've got. I can do this again and like throughout the year so I get proper data, but what are you gonna get? What do you think is gonna be different? Okay, so the number beneath the A-League, because I actually had the actual round 1 figures. So I actually had like the paper numbers and the actual round 1 numbers. So that's actually kind of the actual fans number based again on the newspaper and the TV from those periods. So that's the A-League fan score. It's pretty high score. And you see below is the media unit. So how I'm adding up the seconds of the TV times by 10 plus the word count of the papers. You can see how the AFL 20,000, NRL nearly 19,000. So, and again, those numbers are conservative. The A-League should go in the opposite way, right? So that their fans numbers should be increased. And AFL and NRL, those crowd numbers should go further to the right because of how conservative the newspaper and television numbers are that I've talked about. So based on media coverage, based on the fans formula, NRL and AFL would have to get average of those crowds, technically double, if you really technically have to double those numbers. That's what you're expecting to get the conversion of media coverage for the A-League to media coverage to AFL and NRL. Again, I'm not considering the radio. I'm not considering weighting back page numbers. So like if you have a full back page or front page cover on the sport, you get more weighting because there's like more important news coverage. So that shows you what we would get. The other thing we need to talk about is the level of coverage the A-League got for the week leading up to the kick off the start of the season, right? So this was, I think it was like around 5th October that time. Technically, it was 12 days after the AFL and 5 days grand final and 5 days after NRL grand final. And still, so you could argue like, okay, the NRL grand final just happened. Yeah, but you still have like Wednesday, Thursday, and even Friday to push the league. AFL, you still have a full week you could push the A-League. But they didn't. There was literally only 2 back pages dedicated to the A-League. One was photographed Mark Tilling and Socceroos top. So you're like, what is that? And one was actually Daniel Zani and MacArthur top. Wow, one day they actually did a coverage of the A-League, like with an A-League top. But it wasn't like the next page was a double page spread of the A-League. How awesome was the A-League? No. Most of the articles were back in like page 7, page 8, page 9 of half pages. They didn't even really push the star of the A-League. And what makes it even worse, more egregious, is the ages cover of the A-League. Oh, this is amazing. Every day leading up to the start of the A-League season open on the Friday, every day, right? And the Melbourne team opened up. Was it 2 Melbourne teams? I think it was Western United. I think it was replayed the grand final, Melbourne City, sorry. Started. So there's plenty of Melbourne coverage in that game, right? Leading up to this game, every day the Age will find a negative story to talk about football in general. There are some negative stories, fine, like the Sydney United, the racism stuff. Yeah, talk about it. That's terrible. That should be covered. But there's also plenty of opportunity to talk about the start of an A-League season, right? So a lot of these these numbers aren't even like correct. They're just like negative stories, right? Oh, no, actually, no, it's fair. No, I didn't cover those negative stories. No, sorry, I didn't. They weren't related to the A-League. So sorry, no, ignore that. I didn't talk about. I didn't cover those. It was just fine. I actually just wrote them down, right? Anyway, one of the stories was from a story from the Chilean League. Now, it was a terrible story, I must admit. There was actually a stadium crash in like an open training session. Fortunately, no one died. That's fantastic news. But look how small the article is. There's plenty of room in the paper for you to do like another A-League story. You could even do like a negative A-League story if you want. At least cover it. Like, all you had to do, right, the Age, all you had to do was get your phone out, call anyone in the A-League, any player, any coach. You could have called the hot dog vendor at Amy Park. Excuse me, hot dog vendor at Amy Park. Yes, what percentage of meat do you have in your hot dogs for this A-League season? Well, now that you mentioned it, we're down to 5% meat in our hot dogs. Down to 5%? Wait a second. There's a story here. Hot dog meat is equivalent to A-League success. 5% actually means the end of a season. Is this the end? Like, you could have done that story if you wanted to. You could have like done any story which kind of talks about the A-League, but you had to like dedicate time to a negative Chilean story rather than covering the A-League. That, you know what I'm getting at? And people want to say the A-League's like, oh, it's getting covered. No, this is the reality, people. Everybody lives in a different stage. They don't understand. I've wasted my freaking, not wasted my week. I've actually proved something this week. But I spent this week showing you what is like out there in the A-League wilderness. No wonder Simon Hill was angry. This is what he used to deal with. This is his colleagues, right? Jeez. Anyway, so what did we learn? So we learned that Simon Hill was right. That also about his music choice. He's a metalhead, so good work, Simon Hill. Yeah, but he's right that the A-League's doing very well for its crowd numbers. The amount of coverage it gets is doing fantastically well compared to the NRL and AFL. And so I've even considered things like the radio coverage, the unweighting back pages, the actual starter from the mid-season of AFL, NRL, and the pre-season. I haven't considered those, and A-League's still doing fantastically well. And look, the metric, there's weight to this metric. I feel like if you're a marketing company and you're starting a campaign, like, how do we get more bums? We got to measure how many more bums on seats through this marketing campaign. You'll do it. And this is the equivalent. But it's the equivalent because not every football code has the same marketing budget. And the NRL and AFL are on mainstream channels, so have more exposure. So you can't really use all those stats. Well, you can. I mean, you can. But this is like the equalizer. This is free media. Everybody should get equal rights to, especially the ABC. So I think there's actually some sort of weighting, or there's actually some sort of credibility to this metric. The fans metric. But what is the real story here? The real story here is the disappointment of the media. and how poorly it gets covered. A sport gets covered. Especially a sport which has done a lot for society. And I'm talking to you about you, ABC. Your lack of respect and your lack of coverage of the A-League, it actually baffles the mind when you consider your values. Yeah. Anyway, let's talk about this. Look, I'm talking to the old media people, but especially ABC. This is the first league to actually start a women's top flight football comp. And this was like only 3 years after starting. AFL and NRL has taken like 20 plus years to start their women's comp after starting, right? So where's that? Where's that article, ABC? Anyway, maybe it's out there. They had the first Pride game, the first openly gay footballer or pretty much male sports star in the football codes to come out in this modern era, right? So he obviously felt comfortable enough and trustworthy enough in his community. Yeah, he might have expected some backlash. That's unfortunate society, but he still did it. And there's also the other part where we're having a lot of immigrants coming to Australia and they're using football to give their family a go in society. But not just that, still connect with their past, still connect with their old country while trying to, be one with Australia. And you're trying to stop this, man. You're trying to stop all this positivity that's happening because of the A-League. And you just don't want to cover it. It's just so disappointing. And the ABC, I watch you guys during COVID. I watch Morning Breakfast every morning. I don't know why, but I watch it every morning. And every morning, especially during COVID, when then A-League games had to be rescheduled, and it'll be a Wednesday night game, it's the only live sport in the country. Come Thursday morning, guess who wouldn't cover any A-League results? It's just you guys are really, really not nice people. I'll just say that. So anyway, the media's terrible. They don't cover the A-League. The A-League's doing very well for the media coverage gets. So great news. But here's even better news. The football community is doing this so well with so little. I'm speaking to you now, football community. Football community, if you ever organize or unionize or get together and put your little differences aside and just focus on football and making football a success, it could be the biggest league in this country. It could be. There's no reason why it can't be the biggest league in this country, right? It's just a matter of fact. It could even be the biggest league in Asia, right? I know you say, just big Asia. No, being big in Asia is a massive achievement, right? It will never be big in Europe. Just look at what happened with Chelsea. They spent more money this transfer season than the top 5 leagues combined, even their own league. So you're never going to get the top in the world. But the top in Asia is a real possibility. So you have to do it. You have to go to games. You have to support it. You have to make success. You have to watch it on TV. It's only up to you. We've just shown how bad. And the A-League's been around for 17, 18 years now. And the media's not getting better. It's up to you to do it. And I believe you can. I believe you can, football community. I think we can do it because, it's the most powerful thing in the world. I shouldn't say it, but spite's pretty good. If you see how little people care about something you care about for no real reason, except how much the game gives to people, here's your chance now. Here's your chance. Say, nah, screw that. We're going to organize and we're going to follow the A-League because it's a good league. It's not the best league in the world, but it's good. It's got its charm, and at least you can go there and watch it live. And the atmosphere is fantastic. So anyway, thank you very much everybody for watching this. I got a bit passionate at times. I really love the A-League. I wanted to do well. I've been a member for LA United for 13 plus years. I'm always going to be a member. So for me, it's just I wanted a way to finally show what we all see in the football community and just highlight how bad it actually is out there. So anyway, thank you for watching. I might do more of these metrics later on, using the pre-season, the mid-season things. I might do that. If not, so be it. But again, thank you for watching. I hope you got something out of it. Comment below. I'm sure it's going to be full of rational, well thought out comments with no hate speech. Because, yes. Anyway, thank you very much for your time. Keep watching A-League. Keep listening to heavy metal music. I've been Daniel. Good night.